Hello everybody, and thank you so much for joining me. I am excited to be wrapping up our Mongolia adventures tonight. So tonight I'm going to be doing the fourth and final installment of my adventures in Mongolia. Tonight I am going to be talking about the Gobi Desert, some dinosaurs, checking out Genghis Khan, and also my insane experience trying to leave Mongolia. Now, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to drop them down below in the comments. Now I'm going to jump right in. Now we're going to start off the talk here in the Gobi Desert. Now, the Gobi Desert is not what you typically think of what a desert is going to look like. It definitely wasn't what I thought the desert was going to look like. There was way more green and, just grass everywhere and not a lot of sand dunes anywhere. This is us driving into the Gobi Desert, and it's one of those places where you do definitely need to take a tour. There are no signs anywhere. There's nothing around. There's, makeshift streets. You can't even really call them streets. You just thoroughfares. But it's the middle of nowhere. I actually had talked to some travelers in one of my hostels, and they had told me about their adventures about renting a van and going themselves into the Gobi Desert, and then ultimately getting lost for 3 days before they eventually returned to Ulaanbaatar. So I definitely don't recommend it. I ended up going with Sunpath Tours, and they were incredible. Now, from here, you end up there's a specific area in the Gobi Desert where the sand dunes are, and they just kind of magically appear. They just look like they've been plopped down in the middle of barren land. So the dunes here are incredible. It's just like one straight row of dunes. When you get here, there are like little camps. This was our camp, and basically this is all you saw. There was nothing. You can't see anything else for miles and miles and miles. Like the land is flat any way direction except for when you look at the sand dunes, but there's nothing. You can't see anything. So these gurs were set up. We had our tour, and there was another tour there as well, so we all had room in the gurs. One of the things that they do here is that they do milk the horses here. So they use the mare's milk for a number of things, including obviously milk, cheese, but one of the things that they do definitely use it for is the fermented mare's milk. Now, this is the Mongolians' specialty alcoholic drink. I guess it's a bit like moonshine. It definitely has, you have to get used to the taste. Was not my favorite, but you'll try it, and yeah, it's definitely an experience to try. But it is a great and easy way to be able to make alcohol when you're out in the middle of nowhere. Now, obviously there's going to be camels here. There are 2 humped camels here, which are really cool since you don't really get them in very many places in the world. And they're just kind of nice, foreground to the backdrop of the dunes. Now, you can't really understand how large these dunes are, but I think this next photo shows you exactly how tall the dunes are. So those are the camels down in front, and that is the dune there. And that is the dune that we climb. And I was, pretty, gung-ho at the beginning. And this is me about a quarter of the way up. You see nothing. There's nothing when you look behind you. And if you look onto like the right-hand side of the photo, those are some people climbing up there. Like, they look like ants. It is so huge. This is me and one of my guides, Dashka, and if it wasn't for him, I would have never made it up this mountain because it was so hard. At this point, I was basically telling him to leave me here. I can't make it. I'm going to live here for the rest of the time because it was so hard. I don't know what it was, but I seemed to be the only one having troubles climbing this. You would think I would have been a lot more fit because I just came from doing a big hike in Nepal, but you know, it is what it is. But he definitely encouraged me and got me up to the top of the mountain. This was the view looking up, probably about maybe halfway, and it just seemed like an impossible task because, you know, you obviously slide down quite a bit when you're walking through the sand uphill. But this is me making it to the top of the sand dunes. As you can see, I've got sand all over my face, in my hair, because I kept trying to climb up like this, because it was a lot easier to climb up on with four limbs instead of 2 limbs. So, but I'm so glad I made it. I made it there just in time for sunset. But everyone else was enjoying and just relaxing while they're up there. I was dying. But the happiness I felt for being able to accomplish this, and also being able to get the photos that I did in the short amount of time that I was up there. Now, as you can see, the people behind me, some of them are coming up and then some of them are going down. But the photos you get from these types of dunes here are really beautiful. They create these really gorgeous lines, like very sharp edges, and it looks like silk to me, the photos that I got from here. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful sight to see. And, you know, when you do come here, definitely make sure you climb the dune. Take the time and make sure you get up there because it is worth it no matter how hard it is. And again, like you see, there's nothing for miles and miles and miles away. And there's not a lot of sand dunes, you know, going forward. Like as you see, there's like these major sand dunes that we're on, but going out, not a lot. Now, when you go down, it is definitely a different story. I started off first, you know, just kind of walking and sinking down, but then we all started to get a little bit more courageous and found out that if you start running down the sand dunes, it's so much easier and a hell of a lot more fun. So we were just booking it down the sand dunes, and it took us no time at all. The other thing that happened while we were here was it was one of our drivers' birthdays, and so we had an epic party in the desert. Everyone that was there, we all pooled all of our alcohol that we brought with us, and everyone just had a great night, had cake, you know, food, and then we drank the night away. The music was blasting out of the vans that were there, so it was just a super fun night. Now, in Mongolia, I don't know if a lot of you know, but Mongolia is such a really cool place with dinosaur discoveries. Now, this picture here is from the dinosaur museum that is in Ulaanbaatar, but we also went to the Flaming Cliffs here. I've mentioned them a couple times throughout the days that I've done Mongolia. But this is one of the most important places that they have found dinosaur bones and evidence. So these... I love this photo. So basically here they have found dinosaur eggs, and this was actually the first place that had evidence that dinosaurs actually lay eggs. So it's a really cool discovery, and I think that happened in the 20s that they discovered that. They also found velociraptors here, which is super cool and super scary. The other thing that there's a ton of dinosaurs that lived here, and they represent, I think it was 1/5 of the amount of all the dinosaurs that we knew that existed lived in Mongolia and in around this area. So it is a really cool place. If you are into dinosaurs and love dinosaurs, definitely you want to check out and look into that. Now, we did go to another museum, and I loved this museum. It was, obviously, it was a very small museum, and I loved the diagrams on here. And even though it looks, a little Mickey Mouse, it's nice to see them taking pride in their history. So they did have on display, so up at the top left, those are dinosaur eggs. And down at the bottom, the one next to it, these are all, that one was almost like a triceratops, except that it didn't have the horn as it does on the triceratops. And then down at the bottom right, that's a dinosaur head. It's so tiny. And then they have vertebrae. So they had lots of different types of dinosaur bones. And then one of the cool things that I loved, personally, I love the picture in the middle, but they had a lot of taxidermy of the different animals that you can find in Mongolia. Although some of the taxidermy is a little suspect, as you can see, but it was really cool to see what types of animals you can definitely see here. And I had no idea that they had a Gobi bear here. So you learn some really cool things, even though it looks really small and uninteresting. Definitely go in and see all the little spots. While outside of the tour, there was a few of us that got together who had been on tour together, and we rented a van and a driver to take us out to go see Genghis Khan. So Genghis Khan, this statue is very famous in Mongolia. Now, he is large. So I wrote it down. So he's 40 meters high, just him on his horse. And then he sits on the building, which is another 10 meters high. So that's 50 meters high. To give you like a little bit of a reference, the Statue of Liberty is like 93 meters high. So it's a little bit more than half of the size of the Statue of Liberty. It is insane, but it is super cool. Now, along here, there's lots of different little parts that you can go and see. They have a bunch of these bronzed statues of all his warriors, all in different poses, which is really cool to see. And then when you go inside, one thing I love is that everything is giant inside as well. So you have the traditional Mongolian boot, along with a few other items there. Now, you can walk up and you can get a view from the top of the Genghis Khan statue. So you walk out onto the horse's head, and it's just something that you don't get a picture of often, of being right up beside Genghis. Now, the views here are incredible. So there's not a lot around, and I'm sure it's probably built up a little bit more now. But it's just really, really beautiful. So you have definitely the gurs and different things within the gurs, and then you have some places to camp as well. But it was just beautiful countryside. Now, one of my favorite things is where you go in and out of to get to the viewing platform. You basically come in and out of his crotch. So if he was a girl, he'd be basically, birthing all the tourists coming out into seeing the landscape of Mongolia, which I think is amazing. So that is what I have for photos. I want to tell you about my time that I had at the airport, because I obviously didn't take any photos while I was at the airport. So I got to the airport, and if you remember, and if you've been following along on my Mongolian talks, you'll know that I lost my passport here. So I lost my passport, and I got a temporary passport. I had to extend my flights. I had to convey with the consulate, the Canadian consulate, to make sure the dates were right for when I could leave, depending on my visa, because I get a 30-day visa here. And so they, told me the date that the last day that I could leave, and everything. They set me up with a letter to take with me to the airport, since I just had a temporary passport, explaining what happened, because I'd be picking up my new passport in Thailand when I got there. So I got to the airport a little bit early, and it was just one fumble after another. I got in line to check in and check my bag, and while I was there, they were having a problem with my ticket. So I had a flight from Ulaanbaatar to Beijing, and then Beijing to Bangkok. And for some reason, they weren't able to check me all the way through. So they were only able to check me through to Beijing, and the girl that was, doing all the check-ins was having a hard time, and she's like, just hang on a minute, I'm going to get my manager to fix this. I'm like, okay, no problem. I had time. I was there early. And then this went on and on and on. It's like she basically forgot about me. There was a couple other people where she kind of sent us to the side, and then she just started taking everyone else. She didn't notify her manager. She didn't notify anybody. And we just kind of stood there. And basically, after about a half an hour, I was like, hello. And finally, a manager came out and tried to do a few things. Couldn't do it. Told me that that I'd have to recheck in when I was in Beijing. Okay, fine. Get on my way. Go through. Thank goodness it's a small airport. First of all, go to the baggage check and scan, and of course, I get chosen to have everything ripped out of my bag. So that's taken me a lot more time getting everything ripped out of my bag. Okay, fine. Everything's good. Throw everything back in my bag. And then I get into the line for immigration. And I was like, okay, this is great. Not too big of a line. And I get up to the immigration, and I see him look at my passport. And then he looks at me, and then looks at my passport. And then he says something, and I try to tell him, like, it's a temporary passport. Here's my letter. He didn't speak very much English at all. And then he basically just, told me to wait. And he went and got his manager and told me, basically, stand over here. And I was like, okay. So there was another girl that was also standing over here. So we were waiting there. And then this lady came out. I guess she was the manager for the immigration department. And she starts talking in Mongolian. I don't speak Mongolian. And it just so happened that the girl that's also standing with me happened to know the guy that I met at the embassy, and knew English and Mongolian. So she was able to translate what was going on for me, thank goodness. And everything just kind of fell into place a little bit. So she was telling me that I apparently overstayed my visa, and I was going to be charged $100 American. And I was like, no. This is where stubborn me comes in, because I was like, no, I conferred with the consulate, and they told me this was the date that I could leave, and just kind of explaining my side of the story. And she's trying to translate everything. We go into her office, and so she's like, nope, you have to pay. You have to pay. And I'm like, no. So I get my phone out, and I dial the number for the embassy and talk to my contact at the embassy and explaining to her what's going on. And so she's like, okay, hand me over to the immigration lady. I was like, okay. So they talk back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then she gives me the phone back, and she's like, nope, you got to pay. I'm like, no, I don't. I am not paying, because this is not my mistake, and I shouldn't be charged this. It's basically the principle for the fact. And so she's like, okay, well, hand me over to the lady again. And at this point, I could hear them calling my name for my flight. Arguing back and forth. Most people would just pay it. That's not me. And so she goes and talks to the woman, the immigration lady. Boop, 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 boop. Then gets me back on the phone. Okay, so you don't have to pay. She's going to give you a receipt like you've paid. You have to sign a bunch of documents, and then you can go on your way. I said, great, thanks so much. Click, click. And so this woman is now trying to print everything off from the computer, find all the forms, and have me fill everything out. Again, they're calling my name to get on the plane. And I'm just filling everything out, and I'm going back and forth, back and forth. You know, the airport's so small that I was waving to the people that were calling my name, and they could see that I was in the immigration office. And so I finally get everything done. And I was like, okay, great. So I'm going to run to the gate. Nope. I don't get to run to the gate. I get to go through the immigration line again. So I go through the immigration line again, get my passport stamped, and then I head to the gate. And as soon as I get to the gate, the girl that is waiting at the gate for me, she's like, book it. We booked it down the tarmac there to get onto the plane. And I was that person coming on the plane while everyone was waiting there going, what the hell are we waiting for? So head down and get to my seat, and off we go. So that is the most insane time that I've ever had leaving an airport. But I didn't have to pay. So that is my crazy, crazy ass story. Amy, how long did it take me to climb the dune? It probably took me about an hour. The dunes, actually, I didn't remember to say, but the dune, I think I did tell you, it's 800 meters high. And that, so it's just insane. You know, grouse grind, if you're familiar with grouse grind in the lower mainland here, the Grouse Mountain is 1,200 meters, and the sand dune was 800 meters. So it was high. And yes, I completely agree that the Gobi Desert would be the worst place to get lost, because there is no one around. There is nothing around. There's nowhere to get water, and there's just no one to ask. Even if you do come into people, they don't speak any English. So it is crazy. But as long as it did take me to climb the dune, it probably took me longer than an hour, but it was probably an hour. Most people just ran up it. But yeah, but I do agree with you, Tracy. Yes, sand dunes are the best. I love sand dunes. Climbing them, maybe not my favorite, but everything else about them I love. So I want to thank you guys again for watching tonight. So I hope you have a great night. Talk to you later. Bye.